Welcome to the Free the Bear podcast, a podcast devoted to California independence. My name's Bill, and today my co-host Forbes and I discuss why we want out. We talk about why we feel there is a need for a California nation. So, sit back, relax, enjoy, and as always,
Free the bear. Grrr.
So I did a little research today. I was looking up some recent articles and statistics. So this episode, we're going to talk about something we haven't yet, which is silly. It should have been like the first thing we talked about. Why we support California independence. So I guess I'll start with you, Forbes. Give me your elevator pitch. And it's a long elevator. Let's say up the Sears Tower.
Yeah, Sears Tower, okay, Willis Tower, whatever they call it now, 112 stories. I guess to me, the biggest reason why to leave the United States is because I'm sick to death of waste and incompetence and stagnation. I'm sick to death that, for example, like we can't have the kind of infrastructure that Europe and Japan have. You know, we can't have the high-speed rail. We can't have like the nice airports for the most part. We can't have decent highways. We can't have decent roads because, again, the money's either being misdirected because we're going to pay for, Middle East War version 4.0. The warfare thing really bothers the hell out of me because I feel like, again, there's no paying attention to domestic needs and growth. Everything is pretty much like what's the latest Halliburton project. Again, like we always have to invent a new enemy to go after. We have no ability to either negotiate or, again, get our snout out of anywhere. I'm sick and tired of oil companies running us day in and day out. And then even though there's so many alternatives to clean technology, which even if, again, you don't, for some reason you have some kind of like beef against clean technology and you think it's not the cleanest thing in the world and you think, lithium mines or whatever we're talking about and that it's somewhat the same. Even if you have that kind of beef or misunderstanding, the fact is that we are not spending money and saving money through those technologies. They actually do save us a lot of things in the long term, especially like solar panels, but all the homes have solar panels. We're going to be saving a hell of a lot of cash. This from a pure financial standpoint, but we can't do that because the oil companies took over Congress. I'm sick of our Congress being such a gerontocracy where, the average ages are going around 74, 75, and there's nothing wrong with being old. The wrong part is that these people have been old for the last 40 years in Congress, and they have no understanding of what actual life is inside the United States. I'm sick of, Theo, the former chairman, current chair of like NorCal CMP, put it very eloquently when he talked about how he was sick of subsidizing Southern apartheid states. And I think this is exactly the way we should look at them because of how they keep closing down voting sections, how they keep ensuring that, they're completing a Republican dominance in these states. I'm sick to death of like actually my money going out the window for that. I think also I'm sick and tired of no flexibility in actually getting anything done. Like every time a new thing happens in the United States that actually has meaning, most of the time it's like some kind of accident the Supreme Court poops out of its rear end. Like for example, like the last decision to end discrimination against the LGBTQ community. That was by the Supreme Court, kind of like by accident. Barely, one vote over made that happen. Same thing with the decision to legalize gay marriage. This is never done by our Congress, our elected officials. This is done by pretty much like the fiat of a kind of like, for life Supreme Court, which, by the way, is another ridiculous thing. Again, that you could be on the Supreme Court half dead and you can still make decisions for the rest of the country. That's a ridiculous system. And we can't change that because, again, part of our system too is that we have senators, 2 senators per state who are going to go around and make decisions. And California, which is a bigger population than Canada, has 2 senators in the Senate. Same as Wyoming, which has less population or the same as my hometown of Long Beach, California. So there's a litany of this institutional stagnation, poor decision-making, aging, decrepit leadership, also ones who should have been termed out a long time ago. I mean, thank God in California, our assembly has, again, the term limits. That something can never happen at the federal level because these people would have to vote on it, and they'll never vote themselves out of power. So we have all this this absolute nonsense, and we have to keep continuing on and on with it. And there's no hope for reform because there's too many people with too much at stake against reform. And that's the reason why I'm done with the federal government. And again, I feel like myself, I feel like I am an American. I am an American person. I believe in American values. And I don't feel like America is being expressed anymore. It's something different and it's something gross. And I want to have the America I believe in happen in California.
I agree with all of those things, 100%. I'm going to go in a different direction other than policy. I'm going to take a quote from Carl Bernstein, the famous journalist. We are right now in a cold civil war.
That's a very good term, and actually that's something I didn't know Bernstein said, but I made my friends kind of, I don't know, parallel thinking, I would say, is we talked about that too.
This is a country where you can't even agree on facts, basic facts. Talking even just in disaster, like with this coronavirus, America is incredibly divided. Large portion won't wear masks. They think it's fake. So you have that. In 2010, I don't know if I've quoted you this report, though. It's from a Stanford study. 50% of Republicans would be incredibly disappointed if their child married a Democrat. And that's 33% of Democrats would be incredibly disappointed if their kid married a Republican.
Right.
That is a big thing right now. And this was from the Pew Research. 77% of Americans think this nation is greatly divided.
Right. And that's reality.
I mean, it's not sustainable. And they say 70% of people who are alive today say this country is more divided than we were for the Vietnam War.
Right, which is, again, actually, I would, I know Vietnam gets brought up as a kind of like an example of something within modern memory of like horrible division, but like it actually really wasn't as bad as it is today, because in my mind, the Vietnam War had proponents, both Democrats and Republicans, right? There was pro-hawkish people and there was doves. The doves never really kind of had that kind of numbers. And again, it was also bipartisan on both sides. So there wasn't this partisanship thing kind of going on today. Also, one of the biggest movies at that time period was the Green Berets, which is a horrible movie. It was basically John Wayne trying to reenact a World War II movie in Vietnam. That was a huge hit, including the song for that movie. So, I mean, like, I think there's a lot of like hippie baby boomers who are trying to rewrite history and try to make it look like they were kind of like a majority. And I don't think that was the case. I think for a lot of working class people, Americans, they were more or less with the war. And then, Nixon kind of talked them down. And, even though he inflicted levels of ultra violence in his term, he slowly kind of pulled out because, again, it's mostly it was a drain on the finances of the entire country. Plus, again, like, we're losing ground against the Soviets all over the world at that time. That's the reason why we kind of changed course there. But I don't think it was that much of a division. There was a vocal minority. But when Nixon said there was a silent majority, I think he was 100% right about that. Yes, there was, again, hippies and people, from a whole range of life that were against the Vietnam War, but I don't think it was on that level of division as we're seeing today. It was not really that cold civil war. I think that was, again, that's some revisionist history by kind of like ex-hippies saying that there was a lot of numbers there. Yes, there was massive marches and protests, but there really, I don't think it was on the same level as today. The riots that happened in '68 had nothing to do with Vietnam. It had to do everything with Martin Luther King's assassination. And even then, those kind of riots, and protests were mostly black majority as opposed to white majority kind of protests. So again, I take some issue with that. But again, I see what the idea is, though. And long story short, I'm just saying that we're way worse off.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the majority of people are right on both of those statistics. And you brought this up, and it's obvious, but with gerrymandered congressional districts, what is the benefit or motivation of a congressperson to work with someone across the aisle?
There's no, I mean, again, they're already locked in. It's kind of like a problem actually we have here in California. Again, California has kind of like that system kind of set up that like there's people who can just go, furthest to the left or right, and they'll just lock down their district forever. Well, until they're termed out, basically, and then we get a rollover. But the same thing's kind of happening all over the place with these kind of parties, making sure that they can maintain a hold. The reason why I'm for California, another reason it would be that if we did have California independence, we can start clean, and that's something that needs to be done because again, like there's a lot of people with a lot of investments who are not going to just walk away.
I don't think we've brought this up before, but there's real tribalism in America, where in the sense that you have the Northeast is really its own nation.
Mm-hmm.
You have the West Coast, which is really its own nation.
Right.
The South and Texas are even though they're far right, there is a different brand of far right in the Midwest.
Yeah, then like say like the West, like Wyoming, Montana, the big ranch and sky country kind of places.
So there is a huge just tribalism where coastal elite people, and I got to admit, I've been guilty of this before, think of the people in the Midwest as rubes. That they're unsophisticated, especially in my house, very anti-Confederate, like this whole Confederate flag thing. I'm like, oh, it gets me all steamed because my dad loved the Civil War and, we're very anti-Confederacy.
Yeah, so right. I'll admit, I came from Illinois, and again, Illinois is the land of Lincoln. Like no one supports the Confederate flag BS. No one likes that crap. Always thought it was this, even if we never thought it was like a racial thing, we just always thought it was just like, basically white trash who just thought they're better than themselves. Yeah. And I mean, that's just another great example of tribalism right now. Yeah. Where, I mean, I don't see a difference in evil when it comes to like the Confederacy as I do like Soviet Russia, like fascist Italy. Nazis maybe a little, they kind of take the cake. I'll give them their own league. But like the Confederate flag to me is a symbol of hatred and evil. Yeah, no, well, it's just, to me, it's on the same level of like, I don't know. I wouldn't. Well, actually, I guess, you could say basically Nazi Germany. Sometimes I was trying to be kind of more clever there for a second and try to say like, the South Confederacy was more like a kind of an early version of like apartheid South Africa, right? But actually, Nazi Germany is actually more correct because I don't think what people ever really understand is that a plantation at that time was pretty much a privatized concentration camp. Sure was. They could do anything to those people. They could, rape, beat, murder, pretty much at will. They were never going to be held for their crimes. Just because it wasn't a government-led, effort, that it was pretty much, I guess in the good old American way, it was all privatized. And those plantations were concentration camps. And I would say that's exactly the same level as Nazi Germany. All right, now that you said it, I'll say the same thing. Thank you for breaking that wall down for me. I'll say another thing. There is so much stress caused by the divided nation that we live in, that more than half of the people come election night are going to be crying, have anger, and you're going to be so distressed, while the other smaller majority, because if you include third parties, most people are not going to vote for the president, the person who becomes president. The people who won are going to be on Twitter
just laughing and making fun of the people who lost. There's going to be videos.
No, it'll be a very mean-spirited thing,
This hatred is not sustainable. It stresses the hell out of me. I don't know if it stresses the hell out of you.
It does, because I keep thinking that again, what rough beast slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. I keep thinking what's around the corner here, because again, this is not sustainable. It's obviously not. Politicized violence will be a wave of the future. My fear really, and I think that this is going to get closer and closer, especially as we near election day, is that I'm a big nerd of Northern Ireland's history. And Northern Ireland was a place, and still is, that was divided between two camps. There was the Nationalist Republican, which in their terms basically meant people for unification with the rest of Ireland. And then the other camp was the Unionist and Loyalist camp, which was people who preferred to stay with the UK. And for almost 30 years, these two communities hated each other, lived next door to each other, didn't really have much difference in outlook or talk or how would I say, they basically look the same. If you're an outsider, you could not really tell the difference between a nationalist Republican or a unionist by the way they talk. The only way you could pick up on anything was, if they went to a Catholic church or they went to a non-Catholic church. And then if they had a Union Jack in their front yard, or they had the tricolor of the Irish Republic in the front yard. But you wouldn't really tell. And I feel like that's where America's going. You're going to get these two camps of Democrats and Republicans, and they're already despising each other constantly. And they have their own symbols. What's a big thing right now you see constantly with Republicans is you see either Trump flags, or again, if they're being a little bit more clever, they're having the Gadsden flag, the "Don't Step on Me, you Snake" flag.
Yes.
And also the Blue Lives Matter, Blue Line flag that gets flown around. So they already have their own developed symbols. The Democrats really don't have anything close to that, but I guess their lack of symbols is almost a symbol itself. But anyway, long story short, you're already seeing that kind of same thing that happened in Northern Ireland happen here. And I don't think it's a really good thing to be living through that kind of decades of assassinations, kneecappings, bombings, mass riots, basic pogroms where you had one community swarm another community and burn down their houses. So it's kind of we're looking on the barrel of that. I think we're getting closer to that. And I think that before it gets to that point, maybe just let parts of the country just start doing their own thing.
Well, that's what we want. So let's say that's outcome A, that there's balkanization. We break up into 1, 2, let's say 5 countries. And, it may change here and there. It's either that or how about this? What is more likely? Republicans and Democrats come to compromises and policies, and there's real reform in America where you have term limits, you have Republicans or Democrats that are looking out for the people, not the elite. What's more likely, that or this continued, they're playing for keeps. It's the Trump supporters want total victory and progressives want total victory. Let's be honest. We want, as much as we could talk compromise, our ultimate goal is to get everything progressive. Can
I stop you there though, Bill? Because I think
stop me.
I know what you mean by the total victory thing, but really, I feel like more needs to be dumped on the doorstep of the Republicans. Republicans are the ones who are the gerrymanders. Republicans are the ones who have basically tried to tilt things in their favor, either through court appointments or, again, utilizing a non-representative body like the Senate to try to keep reform down. Mitch McConnell was the one who opened the door that, oh, hey, we're not going to replace the Supreme Court justice, even though we've done this multiple times because, quote unquote, it's an election year. And then he's just pulling out things out of his, his turtle ass. So I really think that progressives always, to me, And actually, I would say this kind of annoys me about progressives, to be honest, is that they seem to always want to have some kind of fair debate against people who are not debating in good faith. I don't think they are at any point. I don't think that any of these people, especially when you have these, super factoids that come out from the Republican Party that are just complete nonsense. Progressives at least try to pay attention to some sort of truth and standards. I mean, yes, it can be obnoxious at times, some of the things that they say and some of their actions, but more or less, that does actually happen more in their favor.
No, I don't think anyone can argue that within reason. I'll throw this out. Republicans are more effective of getting what they want than Democrats or progressives.
Oh yeah, because again, like they have scorched earth tactics. And also again, it's kind of like, you didn't you say always before you're a big chess player?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like if you're playing chess, but the other side is this, the moment you stand up to go to the bathroom, they take away a couple pawns.
Oh, they're cheating. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But are they going to stop cheating?
Oh, no, absolutely not. There's no way in hell, which is kind of the reason why I think that, California needs to make a pretty good exit here because, again, when you have someone if you're playing a game with someone and you find out the other side's cheating, the only responsible thing is just to call them out on it and then also stop playing the game and stop pretending otherwise.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think of other things that I want to discuss when it comes to why I support California independence. At the end of the day, and maybe this is the capitalist in me, mm-hmm. I want to see if a real progressive California can work. And let's see if Alabama, unchained by us libtard cuckolds, thrive with a conservative nation. Let's get, Christ in every classroom. Let's give tax breaks to super wealthy people. Let's cut social welfare programs. Let them have at it. And let's see who wins. Maybe they're right, Forbes. Maybe the Kansas experiment needed more time.
Right. Good reference, by the way, the Kansas experiment, which was an unmitigated disaster. But, yeah, no, I mean, how do I put this? There was the idea that states would be laboratories of democracy, right? That, if you had a certain level of sort of like a weak central government, you let every state just kind of handle their own affairs, pretty much they'll figure out what works, what doesn't, and they'll copy each other or not, that sounds fine to me. Maybe that's actually not a bad idea. And again, especially with a more autonomous or independent California, that would be something that would really showcase again, maybe California sinks, maybe we get too tied down with regulation and, we become some kind of stagnant, France on steroids or whatever, then maybe Alabama becomes like the next Singapore. But I'm just going to bet no, they don't. Because again, Singapore always, try to have education. Alabama despises education. So no, these places who have almost the same amount of population as a Singapore, they'll never pull off anything like that.
This is also the evil capitalist in me. I want more LGBTQ people in California. Not just because they're good people, whatever, everyone, there's good and bad everyone, but statistically they make more money and they commit less crime. I want Alabama to force out 10% of its most productive citizens and force them to California.
Well, what's so funny is that, these people who more or less think they're morally superior or again, maybe, or the master race, right? They always drive out the people who actually did something and actually have the skills, they would, Alabama, I'm sure would drive out gays, probably after a while, probably drive out Jews too, Jewish people were driven out from Nazi Germany, even though, again, they were the cream of the crop when it came to their science and intelligentsia. So I could totally see the same thing, too, because, again, prejudiced people never realize the merits of the people they're prejudiced against, and they will just do anything to really basically drive them out. And then in the end, they're just, the king of the ant heap.
Yeah, that's let's see who's right. And you know what? We might find that there's some balkanized region in the Midwest that's a little from column A and a little from column B, and they might tend to be the best, nation. Let's see what happens. But
Yeah, but no, that's not. I think one of the things is there's a psychological hold that people need to get over, which is that, like somehow there's not the United States as we know it, and parts of it actually did go independent. That somehow the whole house of cards will collapse, and that all of a sudden we'll end up as I don't know, I don't know what they're thinking, like Syria or just Somalia or whatever. But other places around the world have divorced and broken up, and it's not the end-all, be-all. And actually some places do better, some places do worse. I mean, for the west coast of the former Soviet Union, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they're doing absolutely fine. Better than they were ever before. The Czech Republic and Slovakia, they were, Czechoslovakia, they broke up, they're fine. It's absolutely fine. They're not like, in the killing fields. Now, Yugoslavia, that went really wrong, but a Yugoslavian situation, there was so much more going on with the fact that the ethnic prejudice never ended, and there was unresolved, revenge things going on there. I don't see that kind of level of ultra violence happening in the United States. I mean, I wouldn't 100% bet on that because, again, we just talked about tribalism earlier, but I would say that, it's more likely to have a nice, clean divorce as opposed to, oh, well, we're going to start shooting our neighbors because, again, their last names end with a vowel.
I think deep down, Republicans don't want California to leave because they deep down know they need us.
Yeah, I think so, too. And they also know that, I mean, for multiple reasons, between economic, the subsidies that these states are getting, if that gets cut off, like, what are they going to do? They're actually going to have to educate people and try to attract a workforce that actually means something. That'd be crazy.
Well, and how about this? When Alabama, and I'm using Alabama as the punching bag, but whatever, the Southern Confederacy rises again.
Yeah.
When they start making all sorts of bigoted laws, who's Europe going to trade with? Are they going to trade with them or California?
Exactly. They'll turn into pride states. Again, when they start like having like extreme anti-LGBTQ laws, or again, like, maybe they reinforce and like say like, oh, Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal was actually appropriate. Once they do that, they're turning to pariahs. No one's going to deal with them. They'll turn into like mini Irans, where it's just like only like only a few people actually still keep trading with them.
It'll be Russia, Turkey, and Brazil.
Yes, exactly.
And the Middle East. They'll be pumping out oil like crazy.
But like also too, like, these states, especially the old Southern Confederacy, what exactly do they bring to the table of the United States anymore? It's not like cotton is king, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing really besides like tourism and like
tourism in Florida.
Yeah,
I mean, like, you got shrimp. Well, you used to have a thriving shrimp industry before kablooey on the old oil rigs, but in pollution. But yeah, I mean, you had a thriving shrimp business. You had fishing. You had I'm trying to think. Like, you had nuts, a lot of peanuts. But I mean, California still dwarfs the South when it comes to agriculture.
I think what people don't realize is, and even people who might be interested in California independence, I don't think they realize that how big California is and how strong it is. Because I think our economy would still dwarf even a reunited Confederacy. I mean, Texas is a powerhouse in a lot of ways, but Texas is really dependent on oil, which has crashed. Also, Texas right now, because of their good policies, is pretty much the biggest hotspot of the COVID-19 crisis. So again, like, if that's the only card they got to play is Texas, and tourism in Florida, that's not looking too great for them. And again, these are the people who think that they're economic geniuses because they think that if 5 people own 50% of the wealth, somehow that's a healthy economy. So no, they're kind of done after we leave. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, maybe they can just figure out what's so special and what they can do next.
Well, and it might be an awakening for a lot of people. Even just the threat of I always say to people, the threat of California leaving, hopefully when it gains traction, is going to force Democrats to become more progressive. They're going to have to choose to be either Republicans, like, wedge issue Republicans, or they're going to have to be progressive.
Yeah, what was kind of funny to me is that Democrats are such a dumb party because it's a very easy to showcase that most of the times when they've had their huge victories, it was because they ran on extremely progressive platforms, number one, and then number two, enacted them and actually pushed forward with it. I mean, like, we can go back in like history, like, for example, like New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt, and his reelection margins were huge. And again, there was everyone was a Democrat. Like, back in those days when FDR was around, like, you can be elected dog catcher unless you were a Democrat. So these ideas that, again, like, even if you just wanted to, if you're just a cynical politician, if you paid attention in 2 seconds in history class, you realize, like, oh, if we improve people's lives, they pay us back with votes.
Yeah, and I'll even go, the last two Republicans were less warmongers than the Democrats they were running against. Bush, when he ran the first time, when he won election over Gore, he was, let's stay out of the Middle East.
Yeah, no nation building. He made a big deal about that before 9/11. That was his whole platform, and I think that helped push him to be, I mean, he didn't win the popular vote, obviously, but he, was in shooting distance because of that. Because people were sick of, like, of what was it Clinton was doing in Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia.
Yeah, and I'll even add in, although I hate when they blame third parties, but Gore being not the peace candidate allowed Ralph Nader to gain steam and traction.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because, again, we were bombing the hell out of Serbia at the time. So I mean, like, yeah, again, it's not that hard. It's just but when you're, I don't know, it's just the way these people go up the ladder and the way the special interests come in and, like, start slinging money around, and it somehow dulls their senses. Or, the people, especially politicians, are not exactly always the most brave, and so they always just take the easy way out instead of just, like, looking at the what is happening in the country and going, you know what, if I actually ran a little bit further to the left, I'm sure I'm going to actually pick up some more. Actually, I can do this, but they don't do it. Again, and that's another reason why California should leave, is because people in these kind of political systems are so driven by special interest groups. And then, when I mean special interest, I don't want to be like lumping in unions, because as a democratic organization, I'm going to say straight out, the big corporations with the tons of cash, or their interest groups that are a conglomeration of major corporations, they just come out with all this money, and again, it's like nothing's going to be done, and we're just going to sink further into stagnation. And I don't know, it's very upsetting to me, actually. And again, like, the reason why I believe in the California National Party is because I really want to see change, and I want to see an American system, and I don't think America as a whole can accept an American system anymore.
Oh, we are a divided state for sure. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Free the Bear podcast. Thank you very much for listening. If you can, give it a thumbs up. Even if you didn't like it, give it that good old thumbs up and subscribe. I'm very old, but I've been told there is a bell that you're supposed to push or ding or something. So do that. For more information about the California National Party, go to californianational.party. Or on Twitter, vote_CNP. And in conclusion,
Free
the bear.
Grr.